From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. When Colorado writer X Ho Yen was a kid, he loved to read science fiction stories. X Ho Yen is autistic, and he liked how some sci-fi stories, like the Star Trek series, depicted a more enlightened future society where neurodivergent people were treated equally. Eventually, he began writing his own stories with characters who are autistic. His newest book is titled Space Autistic Authors Puzzling Innerverse. It's different from his other books. It's a series of puzzles that reveal the plot of a story as you solve them. X Ho Yen spoke with me earlier this year to discuss the new book and his love for science fiction. We're listening back to that conversation as part of our In The NoCo Holiday Book Club. It's our annual look back at some of the year's most fascinating titles by Colorado authors. Now, you have published 3 science fiction books now. Your newest book is not precisely a work of literature necessarily, it's a workbook for kids. Can you describe how this book works?
I invite the reader to come along with me on a day in my life to assist me because I need assistance. So X, the fictional X in the story has a number of things that he needs to do in the day, and it culminates with going to this conference, this convention. And he has fictionalized his internal world as what I call his Innerverse. And so in this Innerverse, because I'm a sci-fi kind of guy, X flies through his Innerverse in a spaceship, a fictionalized representation of his inner mind. The characters that are on this spaceship are elements of his personality or his issues, if you will. And so, for example, one of the characters is Insecurity Bot, and another one is Disdain. And so something might go wrong. And then Insecurity Bot opens a self-esteem wormhole,
Okay.
right? And that's when the reader comes and helps me. And their process of making their way through the maze helps me escape this self-esteem problem. And so I'm working, the emotional side of things as well as the intellectual side of things in a sort of pseudo-social way.
Yeah. And as someone who, I think many people grapple with self-esteem and insecurity, this sounds amazing. You wrote the book with readers in the 10 to 12-year age range in mind.
Right.
Was there something that made you want to write for that age group?
That age group is the most crucial age. That's the age where your critical thinking skills are really established. That's the age where your path is set really from then on. On my website, I caution people to try to, if you're going to give your kid this book, do it before they're ruined by social media and cell phone and things like that. You know what I mean?
Great advice.
Because seriously, if you go through this book as a 10 to 12-year-old, I hope, and immerse yourself in it, I really do believe that by the end you will have a transformational experience, like I did. The emotional side of the book, where I struggle with self-esteem and whatnot, kind of culminates in a transformational experience where X sort of handles things better as a result of being helped, through these things. And so the part of the lesson is, you don't have to work these things alone, and you probably shouldn't. And to me, that's one of those huge, huge lessons for everyone.
You have talked about how you felt like you were in a fog for much of your childhood, and then you started to feel more aware of things around age 10.
Right.
How did sci-fi fit into your life around then?
I came out of this autistic fog around 10, not knowing how I knew anything that I already knew. For example, I knew how to read, but I had no memory of learning reading. And I know for a fact that prior to that fog lifting, I had been exposed to television shows, movies on TV, like the old classics, The Time Machine and things like that.
Sure.
And those sort of set the stage for when I came out of the fog. I already kind of had this stark difference between the real world and a world that was much more expanded than it. And then I I read some other things, Encyclopedia Brown and some things, but then suddenly I'm reading Isaac Asimov and
Mm,
Arthur C. Clarke and Ursula Le Guin,
yeah.
and all of those things, all the television, the movies, and those amazing classic sci-fi books just expanded my mind so dramatically.
Oh, right. And the worlds that those authors you mentioned create, I can completely understand how that would just open up for it.
Oh yeah, I mean, here you are, you're growing up in a small town, and now you see multiple countries and cultures, and you live in the air and on the sea and underground, and you know what I mean? It just expands everything dramatically, and then you start thinking in terms of long periods of time instead of, day to day, and it's tremendously expansive.
You've talked about how you identify with Spock from Star Trek.
Right.
What does Mr. Spock's character represent for you?
Well, the thing about Spock was that he was human, but he was also not human. And the not human thing about him resulted in, all the things that an autistic kid who doesn't even know he's autistic is experiencing. Being considered alien, not fitting in, having
Mm.
strong emotions, but being it's absolutely necessary to control them, otherwise very bad things happen.
Mhm.
That sort of thing. And that what I just described is how millions and millions of people relate to that character.
How do you think being autistic influences the stories you write and the ideas that you put into your books?
At the very least, I cannot write status quo. Okay. And now status quo was what I'm referring to is when you take the current modern sort of world that everybody knows, that status quo is typically then taken and something is added to it. Now, if it's a mystery, a murder mystery is a murder is added and a detective is added, right?
Right.
But otherwise, it's the same world you're familiar with, and the same for almost any other kind of story. It's the world you're familiar with one twist, right?
Sure.
And I didn't grow up in the world you're familiar with, and I don't live in it to this day. So I can't write that. I can't even if I wanted to, right? And so that drove me into science fiction, especially because in science fiction, I can write stories that are not status quo. I mean, aside from the fact that they're the situations that I'm familiar with, to me, they're the situations that allow me to get into transformational situations. And for me, transformation is everything. It is the most important thing.
I would like to know what you think your 10-year-old self would have gotten from your newest book.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in Puzzling Innerverse, I'm explicitly autistic, and I'm saying, hey, let's work on this together. And I would have learned lots of great things about on the emotional side of things. I would have seen someone struggling with these things and learning how to deal with them.
That's Colorado science fiction author X-Ho Yen. He spoke with me earlier this year about his newest book. You'll find more information, as well as all of our favorite author interviews from 2025 in the show notes and at kunc.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.